everyone, and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Saira, and this week we're going to be having a chat about some of the latest news that's caught the headlines during March, as well as what's gone on during the first 3 races of the F1 season. There has been a lot going on, off track especially, some things on track, so let's just dive right into it. We are going to start off with some of the biggest news headlines that have been going on in and around F1. Now, the news surrounding the allegations with Christian Horner has been in and around F1 pretty much since the season started, but it's still up in the air at the moment. Now, what we do know is that an employee had gone to Red Bull with a complaint and allegations against Christian Horner, and the Red Bull parent company, Red Bull GmbH, launched an internal investigation into these accusations. So they interviewed the employee who had accused Christian Horner, and then they interviewed Christian Horner. Once that was done and the investigation was concluded, they ended up clearing Christian Horner of any misconduct. Now, once this investigation was done, Red Bull GmbH had released a statement saying that they cleared Christian Horner of any misconduct. And it sounded like Red Bull just wanted to leave it there, leave things as they were. But we have here that this member of staff that had accused Christian Horner has been suspended with full pay, and that also apparently they are opting to appeal the decision that Red Bull GmbH have made with their internal investigation. Now, they are well within their rights to do this because the statement that was released said that this employee had a week to file an appeal against this decision. And from what it sounds like right now, and nothing has been confirmed by Red Bull because they're saying it's all an internal matter, what it sounds like is that this employee has exercised that right to appeal. So things are still a little bit up in the air by the sounds of it. Now, because Red Bull have not said anything, we really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and this does come back to a lot of the matter of transparency and accountability that a lot of us fans have been talking about since this news broke, but we don't know what's going on. It does still look like this is something that is ongoing, though, that hasn't been resolved yet, so we will wait and see what happens there, but that is the latest update on all of the allegations against Christian Horner and that case there. Now, we had a lot of drama surrounding Mohammed Ben Sulayem this month. Now, for those of you that don't know, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is the FIA president. And essentially what's happened this month in March is that a whistleblower had come forward with some allegations. Now, these allegations surround 2 races in 2023 and Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and the races were the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, I think, was the race that had the most amount of talk and most amount of media coverage, right? So Saudi Arabia 2023, Fernando Alonso had a post-race penalty. That post-race penalty wasn't well communicated to Aston Martin. It was something the FIA could have communicated during the race, but they didn't for whatever reason. So there was a lot of talk about that anyway. Post-race penalty ended up dropping Fernando Alonso from P3, which was a podium position, obviously, down to P4. Aston Martin ended up appealing that decision, and the penalty got rescinded, and Fernando Alonso took home his podium. However, what this allegation had said was that Mohammed Ben Sulayem had stepped in and spoken to some of the officials at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix to have that penalty rescinded because he wanted, for whatever reason, Fernando Alonso not to have that penalty. Now, with the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and this one slightly confused me, apparently when Las Vegas did their track inspections before the race, which all tracks have to have for the FIA to sign off on them and say it's safe enough for an F1 car and F1 drivers to be on, Mohammed Ben Sulayem had wanted Las Vegas to fail its track inspection and had asked for it to fail. I don't really know why, but yes, that's what this whistleblower was alleging. These allegations had to go to the FIA Ethics Committee because these are massive allegations. Regardless of whether or not it was the FIA president, this was something that was going to have to be investigated because no one should be getting involved with race results. No one should be getting involved with things like track safety and inspections because those are things that the FIA stand for, right? Integrity and safety. Those are the 2 big things that the FIA should be standing for and should be representing in motorsport, not just in Formula 1. The Ethics Committee did their investigation, did their report, and they said that there was nothing wrong. Mohammed Ben Sulayem hadn't done anything wrong. But it sounded like they were saying it was because they just didn't have enough evidence to say that he had done anything, right? So in which case they could clear him of everything. Mohammed Ben Sulayem, after this report got released, then sent out a letter to all the FIA members. And in this letter, he said that he thought that all of this was because someone was trying to destabilise him as FIA president and the FIA as a governing body. And he was not going to stand for it. He was going to stand firm and make sure people had faith and trust in the FIA. Now, the issue is, right, with Mohammed bin Sulayem is that his tenure as FIA president has not been smooth and has raised some eyebrows. The comments that he's made, some of the actions that he's taken, the FIA Gala Awards in 2022, I think it was, where he had some very weird behaviour on stage. Some of the blog posts that people have unearthed about him and his opinions on women in motorsport, it's led to people having a tainted view on him. It's led to people not wanting to trust him as FIA president. And that's people in and around the sport, and this has not helped his case here. But right now he is not going anywhere and has committed himself to making sure the FIA continues to stand for integrity and that they are still a trusted governing body. Now, the next piece of news ended up happening very soon after Mohammed bin Sulayem ended up sending out his letter, and that was an Instagram post that Susie Wolff had put up. Now, I'm going to have to take you guys back to December 2023 for this, when there were allegations about Susie Wolff and Toto Wolff. There was an article that came out in December 2023 or late November 2023 that basically said that there was a team principal or some team principals that thought there was a conflict of interest. Susie Wolff is the head of the F1 Academy, which means she has a lot of contact with the F1 CEO, Stefano Domenicali, and she is then married to Toto Wolff, who is the team principal of the Mercedes F1 team. And apparently in this article it said that team principals were worried there was a conflict of interest, that the Wolffs now were having access to information that they shouldn't have, and all the rest of it, that, there shouldn't be this sort of conflict of interest there, and they didn't necessarily, I think what they were trying to say is they didn't trust Susie Wolff in the position that she was in. Only one or two articles that I saw about this, and then the FIA released a statement not long after saying that they had team principals go to them about it, and so they were going to have to investigate the matter. Not long after that, all of the other 19 principals in Formula One came out and said that they had not gone to the FIA to complain about Susie Wolff or a conflict of interest, that they had full confidence in Susie Wolff, and that they were committed to really supporting the F1 Academy like they said they were going to. And this was quite coordinated because they all came out around the same time with a very, very similar statement, basically word for word. And not long after that, the FIA ended up releasing a statement saying that they had completed the investigation and everything was fine, no worries. Now, at the time after that statement from the FIA came out, both Susie Wolff and Toto Wolff, through Mercedes, had come out with their own statements, and both of them had basically said that yes, this wasn't right, they didn't agree with what had happened. There wasn't a whole load in their statements. You could sense that they were hurt and that they were angry, and there was mention of them talking to their legal teams about what had gone on. But after that, and this once again was still in December 2023, it was very quiet. The F1 season kicked off, so Toto was in full swing as team principal, and then the F1 Academy season kicked off, so Susie was busy really promoting that. And then, like I said, after all the MBS news had come out and he had sent out that letter, Susie Wolff had posted an Instagram post, and in it she said that she had filed a criminal complaint against the FIA with the French courts. She said basically, what happened wasn't right, there was no accountability, there was no transparency, and that being silent doesn't just absolve you of what you've done. It was a very strongly worded statement, and a statement that I completely agree with. The situation surrounding Susie Wolff and all the allegations were absolutely horrible, and she'd said herself in her initial statement after the FIA had dropped their investigation that it had led to awful comments about her career, her family, her relationship. And what it felt like for me is that it was an excuse for people who don't like seeing women succeed, don't like seeing women in motorsport, who might just not like women, for them to have this excuse to go at her and rip her apart and rip apart her career and rip apart her relationship for absolutely no reason other than they could and they had an excuse to do it now. And the fact that the FIA did not have any apology in their statement, and nothing of the sort. It was a very cold sort of, there you go statement, everything's good now, let's just move on, we might have messed up. Not that they were going to admit that, but in their heads just, yeah, we messed up, so we just need to release a statement now. There was no accountability taken, because why were you investigating Susie Wolff and her husband Toto Wolff when apparently no one had complained about a conflict of interest? And this really ended up impacting the way that people were seeing Susie Wolff and her reputation and how much people could trust her for no reason, absolutely no reason. So I will be very curious to see what the outcome of this criminal complaint is. I do hope it gets resolved. I mean, nothing is going to change the reputational damage that she's now had because of these baseless allegations, but I think the very, very least she deserves is an apology from the FIA and to figure out what the heck kicked it all off in the first place. There is one other update that I want to touch upon, and that is Felipe Massa. Now, last year, he was very, very vocal about the fact that he wanted to challenge the decision of the Singapore 2008 Grand Prix being a valid race result. And if you're not sure about what happened in the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, I do have an episode that covers it called Crashgate. Please go check it out because I really enjoyed doing that episode as well. But it was quite controversial at the time, and he wanted the results not to be included in the World Championship because it would end up crowning him as the 2008 World Champion. Spoke about it a lot last year, he did. There were a lot of articles and a lot of interviews that he did about this. And then towards the end of last year, didn't really hear a whole load. He's back again though, guys. Don't worry about it. He's not let this one go because he has now filed a lawsuit against Formula One management, the FIA, and Bernie Ecclestone in British High Court. So, another court case that we are going to be keeping an eye on and seeing what happens there. I don't know how likely it is that he can throw out the results and change what happened in 2008, but he definitely does not want to let this go. And those were some of the major headlines that happened during March in Formula One. But what actually happened on track? Well, can't say there was a whole load. It didn't feel exciting for me. We've had Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and Australia, and these races have not felt the most exciting for me personally. It's just felt a little bit quiet on track. It's felt a little bit boring at times, and not even at the front of the field. I talked about the front of the field a lot in 2023. We know that there hasn't been a whole load of a battle going on up there. There's been a lot of battling further down the field, but the first 3 races of the season so far doesn't feel like we're getting as much on-track action going on up and down the field. There are times where I would be looking at the timing sheets and nobody's within DRS zones. You know there aren't going to be any overtakes going on. I don't know whether it's because I had higher hopes for some of the teams, whether I just thought, you know, we're 3 years into the regulations now, surely the teams are going to start closing up and we're going to see tighter racing up and down the field. And right now, that has not materialised. What I have done for this season so far, though, in the first 3 races, is gather these teams into 4 different categories. We have very clear underperformers. We have teams that are doing better than I expected. We have teams that are doing as I would expect them to, and then the teams that have slightly disappointed me. So we're just gonna go into those categories right now. So for the teams that I thought were very clear underperformers, there are 2 teams in this category, and they are Mercedes and Alpine. And I don't think that's going to come as a massive surprise to anyone, really. Mercedes, once again, don't seem to have a good baseline understanding of their car at all. We are now 3 seasons into these regulations, and for all 3 seasons, they have been very, very lost. 2022 and 2023, I can kind of understand why they couldn't understand their car. 2022, new aero regs in. Okay, fine. 2023, for whatever reason, even though they didn't understand the car the previous year, they kept with the same car concept. Still didn't understand it. Not surprising. 2024, you've come into the season. You've told us that the car is a new concept. Everything underneath is different. What we can see is different. It's a new concept car, and you still don't understand it. And I just think it means that they really don't understand the aero regs then, because if you've gone to a new concept and you still can't understand, do you really know what the aero regs want of you at this point? It's really disappointing. And yeah, they've not had a top 5 finish. No, they have had 1 top 5 finish in Bahrain from George Russell, and that's been it. 6 occasions that they could get a top 5 finish from 3 races with both of their drivers, and they've managed it once so far in a car that Mercedes thought was really gonna just rocket them to the front of the field. What they have had, though, is a double DNF out in Australia. We had a catastrophic engine failure for Lewis Hamilton in the first couple of laps of the race, and then a last lap incident caused George Russell to DNF, and they took no points away from Australia. They're in P4 in the championship right now, behind Red Bull, Ferrari, and then McLaren. Definitely not where they thought they were going to be, but yeah, it's not looking positive for them. The trajectory of their season doesn't look great. I haven't got a lot of hope for their upgrades. mainly because if you don't understand your car, what are you doing to make it faster? You're just gonna be throwing stuff at it, hoping it'll make it quicker with no understanding. So it's disappointing from Mercedes, and yeah, just absolutely an awful start to the season for them. And for Lewis Hamilton, I mean, this is his worst start to a season in his F1 career. 8 points on the board, and he's in 10th place. So I think that just about sums it up. Alpine, yes, are the other team that are in this category. They are 10th place in the WCC right now, and that just about sums up everything for them. They have had a DNF from Pierre Gasly out in Saudi Arabia. He didn't even get to complete, I think, the first lap of the race. There was a gearbox issue. He was struggling on the formation lap. This is a car right now that, you know, no offence to Alpine or their car, it doesn't seem to have any proper strengths. It struggles in qualifying. We've had one occasion now that an Alpine has made it out of Q1 into Q2. No Q3 appearances. So one time a car has managed to make it out of Q1. So yeah, qualifying isn't strong for them. The race isn't great. They've scored no points. And like I said, last place in the Constructors' Championship. That is not where I think many of us expected Alpine to be. I mean, okay, fine, you don't have points, but you are literally the worst car on the grid right now. Haas have scored points before you. Williams, Kick Sauber. We have also had high-ranking members of Alpine's tech team leave, and they've opted to reshuffle the team. They're not bringing anyone in from the outside. And I've spoken about this before with Alpine, how I think having fresh blood into that team would probably help a lot, but each to their own. They're doing what they think is best right now. I just think it will be a long and painful season for this team. Their drivers have tried to be fairly positive about the outlook for the season. We hear them in interviews kind of saying, look, you know, still a long way to go in terms of the season itself. We'll get there as a team. I believe in you guys. But I'd be really curious to know what the conversation is with those drivers and their management teams when they're off track. Because you can say something to the media and say, yeah, we still have faith. And you'll say to the team, look, I believe in us, we'll get there. The only way is up. And I mean, really right now, the only way is up from them from 10th place. But both their contracts for Pierre and Esteban, they're up at the end of 2024. And is Alpine really right now your first choice for a team, especially when so many seats are going to be available on the grid in silly season? I somehow don't think so. But yeah, it's disappointing. I think their drivers will be looking at leaving. Whether they are able to or not is something else, whether they can find another seat. It's just been an awful 3 races for them. Painful to watch. I'm not even an Alpine fan, so for Alpine fans this must be just horrific. I just didn't think it was going to be anywhere near as bad as what it is, even though we had heard Esteban and, you know, rumours about the car not being great. I didn't think it'd be this bad. Moving on to teams who are doing better than what I expected them to, and we have Ferrari as that first team. Team just seems to be more gelled together this year, not just in the car but also off track. The car is obviously a lot stronger and a lot quicker. That is very clear to see. They've consistently been the second fastest car on the grid, right? It's not a perfect car by any means. They're not able to compete with Red Bull, but it's a more drivable car. The drivers themselves are saying that, you know, it's easier to handle. The sort of development direction for this car is a lot more clear to them now. They just seem a lot happier and more at ease with it, and that's for both of their drivers. It's not just one driver saying it's better and one driver being like, it's not great for me, it doesn't suit my driving style. Both of them seem to be a lot happier with it. They have secured their first win of the season already in Australia with Carlos Sainz having come back from, you know, appendicitis surgery. And yes, I get that that win was off the back of Max DNFing out in Australia. However, I think there would have been a time where Ferrari would not have been the quickest car on the grid, where strategy calls would have messed it up for them, where reliability would have messed it up. But they secured a 1-2, and I think that says a lot about the state Ferrari are in right now. I really hope that form is something they continue on for the rest of the season. I am super excited to see what their upgrade package brings, because we're hearing a bit more about them. We're hearing the fact that, like I said, the drivers seem a bit more confident and clear in where the development direction is heading. So I'm hoping this does help get them a little bit closer to Red Bull. Whether they can do it this season or not, I'm not sure. But it just seems like it's a car that is quicker, smoother, easier to drive, and the team just seems to be just getting along way more smooth than they have been. I mean, one last thing with Ferrari as well, because right now they're 4 points behind Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship for P1, right? And that is with Carlos Sainz having stepped out of the car because of the appendicitis and surgery, and having a rookie in Ollie Behrman in that car who scored points in his debut. Phenomenal performance from him. They did that with a rookie in their car. They're only 4 points behind. And yeah, if Carlos Sainz hadn't had appendicitis, if he'd been driving in Saudi, I think because of that DNF from Max, they would have been in P1 at this point. And that's no hate to Ollie Behrman. To still be 4 points behind with a rookie having driven your car is insane to me. So hats off to Ferrari on what they're doing right now. I mean, it feels like they're really building up to something special here, and it's exciting to watch. The other team then is Haas, and I've got to be honest, I had very low hopes for Haas. We had heard in the off-season and in pre-season testing that they were going to be starting off on the back foot. They'd started development on the 2024 car a little too late, and it meant that they were going to play catch-up. It was all lies, guys. It was all a pack of lies. They have 4 points already this season. And I don't know whether Haas genuinely believed they were starting off on the back foot or whether they were tempering expectations, didn't want anyone to get too excited. But the car looks way better. And look, I'm not saying that they're like up there with Aston Martin and Ferrari and McLaren and Mercedes, right? I'm really, really not saying that. Comparing this to where they were in 2023 is insane. Their car is so much better on a race day, because last year in quali, for Nico Hülkenberg especially, they were getting into Q3, they were making top 10s. It was all wonderful and great, right? But it got to a race day and it fell apart for them. This year so far, they've made one Q3 appearance for Nico Hülkenberg, right, out of 6 attempts. But they've still got 4 points, which leads me to believe that, okay, maybe they did sacrifice a little bit of their quality performance, but the performance is coming in where it really, really matters on a Sunday when you can get points, and that is what's important. So I think they did a lot of work over winter break to get all the learnings and teachings they did from 2023, apply it to this car, and really make it a better race day car for their drivers. And both of their drivers seem a lot happier with it, seem a lot more competitive in the Haas, so it is looking really, really positive for them, and I'm really impressed, if I'm honest with you. Teams where I would expect them to be as of right now, I mean, we have Red Bull, who are at the top, exactly where I expect them to be, because what more do I say? I wasn't expecting them to not build a dominant car. I didn't think they were going to mess that up at all. And I wasn't expecting any teams this early in the season, especially, to catch up with Red Bull. The team on a race day is working like a well-oiled machine, bar the DNF in Australia. Yes, that was very strange for Red Bull. Don't really know what happened. That DNF is not going to be keeping Max Verstappen up at night. I don't think anyone's challenging him for a WDC this year. I think he's pretty much got that sorted and in the bag ready. So yeah, I can't lie. It seems pretty good for them. Visa, Cash App, RB are then the other team that are doing as I would expect them to. I wasn't thinking they were going to be super quick. I know some people thought they were going to be a lot quicker potentially than what they are right now. They're around about where I thought they would be. Midfield battle, doing fairly well. I think it's a slightly track dependent car for VCarb. It's not always going to be super strong, but I think there will be tracks where they're going to perform very, very well at. Yuki Tsunoda's pulling out some really good performances for them. Got points out in Australia, the first set of points for the team, and then benefited even more points-wise because of Fernando Alonso's penalty that he had, the 20-second time penalty. Daniel Ricciardo, I think I was expecting him to have a bit of a stronger start to the season, right? I don't think the season's a write-off for him. I think it will get better. But I think I was just expecting it to be a little bit stronger than what it was. But I think VCarb have gone in quite a different direction compared to their car last year. And that might just be taking him a little bit of time to settle into and get used to. We then have Aston Martin, currently in P5 in the Constructors' Championship. And it was a bit of a quiet start to the season for them. It's not been awful, but it's not being as strong as what they were in 2023, right? Like I said, they are in P5 at the moment. I do think P4 is possible, though, because Mercedes are struggling a bit more, and I think with a couple of strong performances from Fernando Alonso especially, could mean that they could leapfrog, take P4, right? I don't think they're doing badly. I think it's just a knock-on effect from when they got lost in their development and their upgrades in 2023, and it was only towards the end of that season that they really figured out how to bring performance back into the car. So I think they lost a little bit of time there. So they're kind of picking up where they left off at the end of last year. So I think upgrades will help them. I think they've got a better understanding of where to take them now. So that'll be interesting to see when they do get those upgrades on the car. I do think it's going to be curious to see what Fernando Alonso does in silly season if that car doesn't look more competitive, though. Whether he opts to stay with Aston Martin, maybe potentially look at the Mercedes seat because Lewis is leaving, maybe look around. I mean, he said he would think about retirement, or he didn't really give a straight answer about it when he was asked about it in pre-season testing or one of the first races of the season. I don't think he's going to be retiring, but there is a potential that he might move teams. Lance Stroll, I mean, curious to see what his future with the team is going to be. Yes, his dad obviously owns the team, but I think there will be a point where he will opt to step away, and I don't know how soon that is going to be. It might be in a couple of years' time. It could potentially be sooner than what we're thinking, but he did end up having a brush with the wall out in Saudi that caused him to DNF. I think more races like that might end up seeing him step away from the sport earlier, but we'll wait and see. I think if he can build his confidence up a little bit more, because 2023, not a good season for him, not the best. It really, really wasn't great, especially compared to Alonso. So I think if he can build up his confidence and if he can get those performances in, I think he'll be sticking around, but we will wait and see. The Kicksauber is then the final team who are in this category of where I would expect them to be. Now, I did not have high hopes for the team. I didn't think they were going to be especially competitive this year, and they have not been. They are a team that have not scored any points yet, and I think it's just about where I was expecting them to be. I didn't think they were going to make any massive improvements over winter break. Now, bear in mind, I do think the slow pit stops are not helping them out, right? Because their drivers are making progress in the race and then tumbling right back down the order when they go into pit because there are issues with the wheel nuts. So that is something that Kicksauber need to sort out in general. It's just, I wasn't expecting anything exciting from them, and it's pretty much how they've performed as well, to be fair, because we've not seen a lot of them this season, bar when they cut to their pit stops. And finally, moving into teams that I am a little bit disappointed in. Not majorly, right? At least not in the case with this first team, and that's McLaren. Now, I'm going to just say right now, I don't think they're doing badly at all. This has been a pretty strong start to the season for them, especially compared to recent years. But I just thought they would be a little bit quicker and closer to Red Bull than what they are right now. And I think part of that isn't down to their car, but just to the fact that I don't think anyone was really expecting Ferrari to be as quick as they are right now. So they've just leapfrogged McLaren as the second quickest team on the grid right now. Like I said, it's not that I think it's a bad car, just thought they would be closer, but they're still doing well. Top 5s in quali, top 5s during races. I mean, podiums this season already. It's not a bad car at all. And the entire team, everyone we've heard from, Oscar, Lando, Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, they seem to have a lot of confidence in the car and the upgrades that they want to bring to it. So the base of their car, they're super, super happy with, and they seem excited about the upgrades that will be coming. I'm not writing them off at all. I think with some good upgrades, they can definitely be fighting for P2 in the championship and be fighting for way more podiums. I just think it wasn't the start I was expecting from them in 2023, and that's why I'm just a little bit disappointed. Not majorly, just a little bit. The team that I would say I had way more hopes for, and the last team we're talking about in this episode, is Williams. I had really, really high hopes for this team, but yeah, it's not really amounted to anything right now. I thought Alex Albon would have had some points under his belt at this point because the car would be a lot stronger, but, you know, James Vowles saying that they were really rushing to get the car sorted. Then you have the fact that Alex ended up damaging his chassis out in Australia. They didn't have a spare, and so Logan Sargent sat out so Alex Albon could drive his car. And yeah, no points on the board for them right now. They didn't wow the way I thought they were going to do. I thought, like I said, some more points on the board, about P6 in the constructors right now, but nope, it's not happening. I don't have a good gut feeling for Williams, and I wish I did, and I could be wrong. I hope I am. I just don't have a great gut feeling about how this season's going to go for them, and I do think it might be a little bit long and a little bit painful for them. Logan Sargent in the first 3 races, not doing well. I say the first 2 races actually, because he didn't drive in Australia, but not the strong performance that we were going to be hoping for him to have in his second season. Once again, not expecting him to be right at the top, but just to close the gap with Alex Albon a little bit more, especially in qualifying more than anything. I think it's always his quality performance I end up looking at. We will wait and see what happens with both him and the car in general the rest of the season, though. I think Logan will potentially get to grips with it. I don't know whether the car itself will improve, though. So that is the first 3 races of the season done. Bahrain, Saudi, Australia. I think it's given a fairly interesting and good reading on how the season could pan out. And don't get me wrong, things change super quickly in Formula 1. A good set of upgrades, a bad set of upgrades, driver swaps, driver mentality changing. So many things contribute to what happens on a Formula 1 track, right? So I'm not writing off the season and saying this is the way it's going to stay. I would be dumb to think that, but I think it's given us a sort of good read on what's happened over winter break for the teams and roughly where we can expect them to be. With certain teams, I'm not expecting a whole load, right? Mercedes, I can't see vastly improving. Alpine, there is only room for improvement at this point, but I think, you know, teams like McLaren, when they bring upgrades in, I'm very interested in seeing what happens there. Ferrari, Aston Martin, and just seeing whether there are races that they can bring that fight to Red Bull. And then further down the table, teams like VCAP, like Haas, you've got points. That battle is really truly on, and the development race for all of the teams is going to be vital this year, you can tell. We have Japan and China coming up as our next 2 races. I do hope they're a bit more exciting than what we've had so far. I've got high hopes for them, so I'm hoping that they deliver. It's been a very long time. 2019 was the last time we went to China, so I'm hoping it provides some really exciting racing out there. Japan is the earliest we've ever gone to the Japanese Grand Prix in April, so that's going to be super interesting to see if that has an effect on how we race out there. But I will be back next Tuesday at 9 a.m. with a brand new episode covering everything Japanese Grand Prix, so please join me then. Thank you guys so much for listening, and diolch yn fawr. Make sure you find me on TikTok and Instagram at stewards_office, where I post a bunch of F1 content. You can find the links for that in the show notes, and I will see you guys the next time you're summoned to the Steward's office.